Hey everyone, welcome back. Another week. I'll talk if you'll listen. Episode 22. Thank you so much for coming back and listening to me talk and ramble and rant. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to sharing some of you guys' thoughts and feedback later on in the show from some of the questions that I posted online. So I can't wait to dive into that a little bit. But before I do, I just want to let you guys know that we are steadily approaching the next major milestone, and that's 1,000 downloads. I'm so humbled by getting even to 2 downloads, guys, let alone having almost 1,000 downloads. So like I mentioned a couple of episodes ago, maybe 3 or 4 episodes ago at this point, I will be doing another ITIYL gift card giveaway. And the reason I'm announcing it earlier than usual is I want to increase the awareness of this gift card giveaway. Although I did have to pull teeth a little bit for the last giveaway, which was the second ever giveaway, I did have way more participation, and it put a huge smile on my face to let me know that you all not only listen to the show, but you guys actually care about the topics, and you guys actually have valuable feedback and thoughts about these topics. So I'm going to do another ITIYL gift card giveaway once I hit the 1,000 download mark. I'm really close. I'm 48 downloads away at the time of this recording, which is Thursday morning. If you're listening to it right away, it should be Friday, or if you're listening to it over the weekend, it's Thursday morning at the moment. So who knows what we'll be at over the weekend. And I do average anywhere between 30 to 50 downloads a week. So that should maybe get me to 1,000 downloads by the time next week's episode drops. So and next week's episode is actually going to drop earlier than normal, guys. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. Got some stuff going on in my personal life, and I'm really excited about it. So the show kind of had to get pushed up a little bit. So good news is it's going to come out sooner. Not so good news is it's going to be more time before the next show drops. So, but anyway, just to dive into last week's recap a bit. So one thing I should mention, everyone, is I did come back from the dentist this morning, just like last week. I'm getting a lot of dental work done, and as a result, my mouth is numb again. This time, it's the bottom of my mouth compared to the top of my mouth last week. So I do apologize if I sound weird, if I stumble over any word, if I sound like I'm mispronouncing a word. So far, I feel like, things are pretty good. I just struggle with like my P's and my V's a little bit. So just bear with me there, and or heck, even make fun of me if you want to. Why not? I got thick skin. I grew up with 2 older brothers. I can take it. Especially my oldest brother. He picked on me a lot. So just diving into last week's topic, I talked about marriage, and I talked about specifically marriage for adults under 30, but adults under 35 can kind of like fall into that category too. In some cases, adults under 40. And the 3 key takeaways, without diving too much into the topic, I don't want you to feel like you had to listen to last week's show, but if you do want to go ahead and listen to last week's show, it is available. That's episode 21. But I talked about marriage and why I feel like it shouldn't feel like such the milestone that it is. And I felt like we put too much importance on marriage for whatever reason. And I said, in my opinion, more women put more emphasis on marriage than men do. And men mainly do it just to keep their significant other happy. Most adults under 30, adults under 35 feel like if they've been in a relationship for too long without marriage, they feel stagnant. They feel like, hey, I'm just here. I'm just playing house. I'm just around. I feel stuck. And for whatever reason, they have the impression that marriage will fix that, marriage will change that, where literally nothing changes other than like some legal documentation, or maybe you make the next step and get a house, et cetera, et cetera. But nothing changes. And one of the key points, and I know I'm a little bit biased, but one of my favorite points that I made from last week is for the young ladies in particular, but for the people out there who feel that marriage will fix something. I shared a story about a young lady who was in a relationship with her boyfriend for almost 10 years. They have a kid together, and she feels like the relationship isn't going anywhere. And she also listed several issues that she had with her boyfriend that her boyfriend doesn't currently do. And for whatever reason, she was under the impression, and maybe even still is under the impression, that marriage will fix that. If your significant other, man or woman, straight or gay, if your significant other is lacking in some areas or doesn't have a desire to succeed in certain areas or isn't bringing 110% to the table in some areas, marriage isn't going to fix that. And if anything, it's doing more harm than good because now you're locked into that mediocrity, right? So, for example, if your wife comes home late from hanging out with the ladies all night, or if your wife comes home late because she works a lot and she's dedicated to work, and she comes home late all the time, you getting married isn't going to suddenly change her work schedule. You getting married isn't suddenly going to change her social habits. These are conversations that need to happen. One would even say before marriage. You need to, get the line straight before marriage. And you need to make sure that, hey, if this is something that is going to continue, you can work towards a resolution and you can learn to tolerate it and deal with it in such a way that it's not negatively affecting the relationship. Then absolutely, yeah, go ahead, get married. Especially if you're under 30, you have more time for the marriage to grow and learn. I'm going to share a story in a bit where my cousin, my actual blood relative, got married to someone that she didn't even know, essentially. And I can't wait to share that with you all. So I took to social media, I took to my Facebook, and I asked the question, in you guys' opinion, who does marriage matter more to? The man or the woman? Do men care more about marriage than women do? Do women care more about marriage than men do? And I got some pretty unique answers, but there's a key observation that I made, which goes back to a point that I made way, way, way in an earlier episode. I think it was like episode 4. Where my argument was that men and women will never understand each other. And I'm going to dive into that point a little bit more in detail a little later on. But I wanted to share some of the thoughts. So let's go ahead and pull this up and I'll go ahead and share the topic. So the exact question was, in your opinion, who desires marriage more, men or women? And I got a slew of comments, guys. So I thought I wasn't going to be able to read all of them, but I actually am. I'm going to read all of them, and in the future, you guys can participate by just when I ask these questions on social media, whether it be Twitter, Facebook. I try to keep the questions off the Instagram, but just Twitter and Facebook. Sound off. More than likely, I'm going to read your response on the show. So definitely sound off. Don't be afraid. Especially if you're too shy to come on the show. So who desires marriage more? So my friend Aaron, he says women most likely, since it takes a man to propose and the marriage rate has decreased substantially since our parents' generation. So of course I asked him to kind of elaborate a little bit more. And he says he still feels that, women desire marriage more. Over his time in dating women. Well, here, let me read this what he says verbatim. Over my time in dating women, they have always had a timeline or an expectation of when they'd like to hit certain milestones. Another friend, my friend Anthony, he says, men desire marriage, women expect it, in my opinion. It was really deep. I asked him to elaborate. I guess he didn't see the post, or maybe he was just being light-skinned and didn't respond. But he says, hey, men desire marriage, women expect it. And I think here's what my opinion on that opinion is. I think there's some truth to that. I think men do desire marriage. I think they do envision a household where they can have a family, they have a wife, they can go out and say like, hey, this is my family, and they can take pride in that, and they can raise the family and be the leader of the pack, so to speak. I think women kind of like expect it. To where I feel like men desire it. They don't put a time stamp on it. They can say, hey, like, this is something that I want. But I think women go into a relationship going like, hey, this has to happen eventually. I'm not going to stick around forever. If we don't get married, then I'm gone. I think that's the general perception that men have, at least. I even had a young lady, my friend Ashley, said, ooh, this was really good. So she responded to Anthony's comment and said, hey, this is really good. So the men mainly dominated this post. And I didn't have any women opposing this idea, but that's good feedback there by Anthony. Here's Maurice. Now, Maurice was featured on the show episode 19. And he talked about therapy, and that's Maurice. So it's the same Maurice. Here's what he said, and not to discredit anyone else, but this comment, guys, this comment was so deep. After hearing this, your third eye is going to open, and you're going to look in the mirror and go, what the hell is this thing on my head? It's your third eye. It has been opened. Thank you, Maurice. He says, women desire weddings. Men desire marriage. I'll say there are more women who want weddings than men who want marriages. So just to break this down, and I actually asked him something to follow up, so I'm going to read his follow-up question. But he's saying, so women want the wedding part, the ceremonial part, right? And he dives into why. I'm not going to get into why he thinks that, because he actually says it, so I'm going to read it. But women desire the wedding part, the ceremony part. Men desire the marriage, like the actual relationship of marriage and what that entails and what that means for him and his family and his seed, right? He desires marriage. Women desire weddings more than necessarily the marriage. So my other buddy, John, you guys have heard me mention his name before. He responded and said, he is correct. Previous experiences showed me this point. She wanted a $30,000 wedding just to show off to people that she couldn't even decide if she wanted to invite in the first place. Meanwhile, myself didn't care. I feel like when a man is ready for marriage, he's ready. And no ceremonial show will define the limit of that desire. But for women, to put it plain and simple, weddings are like a swinging contest. Just fill in the blank there. A blank swinging contest. So that was a really good point that Reese made, and a good comment feedback there from John. There's the point that I mentioned that Maurice made earlier. That was so dope. So I asked, so the wedding process is definitely geared towards the women's satisfaction, and that was a question mark. Why do you think that is? Maurice goes, she gets all the attention. She gets to get dressed up. Everyone tells her how beautiful she is, etc. A lot of women believe that being single equates to failure in life, so they tend to rush into weddings to crush that failure notion, completely unprepared for the marriage portion of it at all. So his opinion, but in my opinion, a valid opinion. Just like John mentioned earlier, it's a blank swinging contest, like where, at least the perception of men, where, you go into this wedding like, hey, look at my dress, and all of the women there, they get this notion like, hey, I want my wedding to be like this, or I like her dress, or her dress wasn't as good as mine, or things like that. That's the perception that men have. So whether it's true or not, that's the perception. The perception is that, like, hey, women care more about this than we do. My buddy Lamar here, I posted, he says women for sure. So that's to the original question. Women desire marriage more than men do. So I asked him, hey, do you think men care less about marriage than women do? And he says, for sure. I can only talk from my experience. I popped the question after a ton of hints. And as for other women, they've thrown hints as well. As you mentioned in your show, marriage doesn't fix a damn thing. So the relationship isn't good. It isn't good. If the relationship isn't good, it isn't good, period. So he was referring to a comment that I made in last week's show that I started off at the top of the show. So that's that. So here's my cousin's response here. She says, as I remember about 15 and a half years ago, it was a mutual desire. It's a beneficial arrangement for both parties. Curiosity fueled myself, and I wanted to say my husband. Since we began early in our lives with the whole dating, playing house situation with different people, we just wanted something real and genuine. It basically was a blind marriage. We didn't know each other, and we had 2 meetings to break the ice, so to speak. The next time I sat with him, I became his wife. The growth of us both has been mind-blowing. I was 18 and he was 29, so just imagine a roller coaster ride. So I said, wow, that process involved you two learning each other must have been very trying. Learning to be married to someone that you don't know well involves tons of patience. So what about the wedding? Who cared more about the wedding and why? To which she responded, and this is my cousin Angel, by the way. Shout out to Angel. She says the wedding and put a ton of question marks. It was he and I with a few witnesses, none of which were my family, which was sadly, other than her son. But it was simple in his apartment, and he cooked a nice meal for us. I just showed up with my kid and married him. The food was good, I must say. At that time in my life, I was at a crossroads. I wholeheartedly asked God for someone that would be good for my son and I, and boom. So I didn't want the whole traditional wedding thing. I just wanted someone to build a life with. So this kind of contradicts Maurice's point where Angel was saying, hey, look, I didn't care about the wedding. I didn't want it to be fancy. I didn't want it to be amazing. I just was more concerned about the relationship. And this is to my friend Maud's point, who shouted out last week, where she said people focus more on the marriage, not the relationship. This is Angel saying, hey, look, I care more about the relationship. I didn't care about the wedding. I didn't care about the ceremony. And she genuinely felt like her and her husband had an equal desire to get married. Her and her husband genuinely wanted to get the marriage together. And I posted a follow-up question here, and I just want to read one more response here from my cousin here, another cousin. So she says, I believe long ago women desired marriage more because back then, from an early age, women were more often taught to get married and have children. In this current society, it now seems that both men and women fear marriage due to its obligations of commitment and responsibility. Truth be told, I think men desire marriage just as much as women. They just don't want to look weak in front of those other brothers that shy away from marriage. So they don't express their desires for marriage as openly as women do. So I asked, do you believe that men feel like they benefit from marriage? To which she responded, no, I feel like the majority of men look at marriage as the beginning of the end of their lives. They think they will be bonded to a life of servitude attached to only one woman with no freedom to live out their true greatness, or either they simply don't associate marriage as something that is beneficial to the soul in daily reality. However, the world is waking up consciously, so I don't want to totally discredit those awakened brothers who truly do desire and appreciate the vast benefits of marriage. So a key point there that I wanted to point out is I think most men do feel like they don't benefit from marriage. I think older men, let's say 35 and older, have a different stigma of marriage, and they have a different perception of marriage. But I think most adults under 35 look as just like my cousin said here, the beginning of the end. They say, well, basically, my life is over. Instead of looking at it as a new beginning, they're like, hey, well, look, no more fun with the things that I currently have fun with. I got to find a way to have fun with the other person that I'm with. And one will argue like, hey, it should be that way. But you can see and understand why some people feel like, hey, look, it is the beginning of the end. And they feel like that, hey, look, all is lost. Now, a key point that I wanted to make earlier. So my buddy John, he shared this post in a large Facebook group that he's in. And although I had two young ladies who responded to me, he had more young ladies respond to him than men. And I want to point out an observation that I made. So here are some of the responses from what he said. So every woman said no, women don't care more about marriage than men do. Every man said women care more about marriage than men do. So you can see this disconnect. And this is what I feel like men and women will never understand each other. You got a group of women, all under age 35, who feel like marriage is desired equally by both parties, right? And that there's no way, they get really defensive. They're like, look, there's no way that we feel we desire marriage more than men do. And all of the men are going, hey, look, they care more about marriage than we do. Marriage is for the woman. The wedding is for the woman. We don't really care that much. Now, there were some women who said, hey, look, I got married in a courthouse, or hey, I desire a courthouse wedding, or hey, I don't even want to get married. So there were some women who said that. So I do want to be fair here. But I did want to pay like the observation as I was reading everything. I was just saying to myself, like, wow, look at this. There's such a gap in communication. There's so many women who think one thing and so many men who think the other. And I couldn't find one occasion where the men and the women agreed with each other, line for line. And it was crazy to me because it's like, hey, we're out here marrying people who will never understand us, and I think go and listen to episode 4, I believe it is, if you want to get a little bit more insight on the point that I made. But the point that I made was like, hey, men and women will never understand each other. I mean, we try to, and I think we're genuine about it. Like, we genuinely do want to understand each other, but we never will. It's just a lost cause. So, another thing that I feel like most adults under 35 won't understand is money, finance. So you take a look at money, you take a look at finance, and it's such a taboo topic, right? It's this thing, this stigma that, adults under 35, we're at a disadvantage. We have a lot of roadblocks, and we just can't succeed financially. We can't save. We're financially immature, financially irresponsible. The society is set up for us to fail, blah, blah, blah. You have some people who are like very victims, like, hey, we can't do this. You have other people who are very objective about it and say, hey, we can. We just have the odds stacked against us, and here's why. So I posed the question. This was exclusive to my patrons. This was exclusive to the patron Facebook page. So I'll give more information towards the end of the episode on how to become a part of the Facebook page. A lot of goodies there. But I posted, hey, in you guys' opinion, why do you think adults under 35 struggle with saving and or investing their money? Charles said it's due to lack of knowledge on how to do this. They just don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. Breyer says living paycheck to paycheck can make saving pretty difficult. And he goes, well, if going to college isn't an option for you, or you just aren't comfortable with putting yourself thousands of dollars in debt, your options are limited. That can be even worse if you live in an area that's generally lacking in opportunities. So he basically goes on, just to summarize, because he made a long point, but just to summarize, there are a lot of responsibilities that you have. You're talking about student debts. You're talking about student debt. You're talking about, phone bill, groceries, insurance. You're talking about car payments. You're talking about a lot, and it can make the idea of saving seem foreign when you have all these expenses. So that was what Breyer's point was surrounding that. Chris, you guys heard from Chris a couple of episodes ago when he talked about the Stream Engine. Go ahead and check out the Stream Engine if you haven't already. But Chris says it's twofold. Millennials in general are paid less than our parents' generation at a comparable time in their lives by about 20%. Add on to the fact that the cost of certain goods and services, namely education and home ownership, have gone up as much as 800 to 1200%. I'm not saying that it's impossible, completely out of our hands, but the fact is most people don't know how to balance a checkbook, and still some think that credit cards are banks giving money, but it's hard to correct a small issue when there are bigger ones in the way. So I asked him, like, hey, how do you think we can get over this, right? Because, it's so easy to sit here and say, oh, we can't, right? And list the reasons why we can't. But I say, like, hey, how do we get over this? And Chris offered some advice, just to read some of what he said. Learn the basic financial literacy, like balance a checkbook, making a budget, etc. Learn about investing and saving accounts. It doesn't take much to start, but the sooner you do, the better. So to that point, and one of my biggest pet peeves, I have a pet peeve, like a lot of people in my generation, specifically in my peer group, they'll oftentimes complain about how much money they make. They'll complain about how they need a better job because they need to get paid more money, but almost none of them know how much they spend. They know how much they make, but they don't know how much they spend. And one will argue that money saved is also money earned. And you can't sit here and complain about how much you get paid when you don't even realize how much you spend. So think about it. How many of us complain about how much we make and how much more money we need to make and how we need to find a better job, but we also don't have a budget? So we sit here and complain about how much money we make, but we don't even have a budget. One thing that I used to do, and I kind of fell out of habit, unfortunately, just got lazy, but I need to start doing it again, is I used to take my bank statements and put it in a spreadsheet month by month. and I took a look at each thing that I spent money on. And I took out all of the things that, like, the consistent things like internet bill, phone bill, rent, etc. And I totaled up that total sum, and I looked at what that total sum was. And I compared it to what my total paychecks were for that month. And I go, okay, this is a certain percentage of my paycheck. So with all my bills gone and all my bills paid for, theoretically, this is how much money I should have left over. So here's a small example. Let's say, and I'm going to use small numbers just for the sake of math. But let's say you get paid $1,000 a month. You take your bank statement and you put it into a spreadsheet and you say, okay, I get paid $1,000 a month. And you would know this by looking at, when your check gets deposited into your bank account. So you would take that number. So let's say it's $1,000. You're like, hey, I make $1,000 a month. My bills add up to $200, right? So you look at, like, okay, my phone bill, my cable bill, internet, transportation, yada, yada, yada. That adds up to $200. So theoretically, I should have $800 left over. Like, that's what you should be saying to yourself. You sit back and wonder, like, wow, I don't feel $800 richer. Where's all this money going? You need to take a look at your bank statement and go, oh, that time I spent, $100 on, wow, I spent $100 a month on Starbucks. Or wow, I spent, $100 a month on drinks. Or wow, I spent $100 a month on going out clubbing. Or wow, I spent $100 a month on ordering out and eating out. Take a look at that. All that adds up. You may spend like, hey, I only spent $20 here. I only spent $20 there. You do that 5 times a month. That's $100. So I want to get you guys' opinion, and I am going to be posting questions on Facebook throughout the week. So definitely key in so I can get some of you guys' opinions. But I want to know, why do you think that we don't budget, and why do you think we blame it on how much money we make instead of how much money we spend? Why do you think that is? You think it's easier to blame other things if we don't want to take accountability? Or do you think, we just genuinely don't know how to save? So sound off in the comments, guys. Again, there's several ways you can do that. You can do it on the YouTube page if you're listening to this podcast on YouTube. If you have a Spreaker membership, you can leave a comment on the episode. Or if you have if you follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, feel free to drop a comment on one of my posts and let me know. I'd be curious just to hear, what you think, and what's going on. So I would love to hear that from you guys. And I genuinely want you to tell me what you feel, because it's real. In my opinion, I think it's real easy to be the victim, but how are we going to change it, right? What are some of your ideas? Speaking of ideas and helping us save money, this week's featured business is Shares TV. So a good friend of mine, Tasha, who I've known for a bit, is involved in the company Shares TV. So it's a pretty cool company. It basically gives financial guidance and advice. And I won't get too much into detail. I will let Tasha do that for you in the interview. But I thought it was a unique opportunity to reach out to Tasha, because I feel like a lot of people, especially those in urban communities and especially adults under 35, do struggle with saving, and they don't understand things like credit and investing and things like that. So I thought, what more of an appropriate week to feature a company that helps us do those things. So without further ado, here's Tasha, and here's Shares TV, along with some useful financial advice.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for sticking around another week. And with another week, we have another guest and we have another business. This time around, I'm welcoming a very old friend, known her for quite some time. So without further ado, we have Tasha, who is here to talk about Shares TV. Tasha, how are you?
I'm doing well, Tim. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, no problem. I'm really happy to have you. I'm really excited, not only to just speak to you because it's been a while, but to talk about Shares TV. So what is Shares TV? And what are some of the things that you guys are doing?
Okay, thanks. So pretty much Shares TV is an animated finance series dedicated to helping millennials make money work for them. And so the series is completely animated, and what my role in it is, I'm executive producer and writer of the series, so all of the content is produced and written by me. What I do is I partnered with a financial influencer who actually, his name is Anthony Copeman at Financial Lituation on Instagram. He approached me in December and he said, hey, I have this really dope idea for a finance series for animation, and I just want to make it a really cool and innovative way for millennials to really talk and engage in discussions about money. And so he approached me, and so together we partnered up and we created the series. And we have a variety of different segments right now. So far we have our financial tips. And so if you go on our page, which is at Shares TV on all social media, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, at Shares TV, you'll find a series of financial tips in which every week our characters, there are four of them, Michael, Troy, Essence, and Brandon, they drop financial tips around around a variety of topics. So that could be savings, investing, checking accounts, how to negotiate your salary, just all types of topics that millennials need to know about. Debt, student loan payments. We also have a segment called Q&A, where, a lot of times our audience members, our viewers, they will send us questions. And so what we do is we put that in a segment called Q&A, where one of our characters will host it and answer some of those questions. We also have Shares Library, in which, again, like either a character will be in character or video form, where we tell people, what are some cool financial reads that they can look into to really get their mind stimulated in terms of money. And we also have Money Mike Monday. So one of the people who voice our characters, his name is I Am Brad Hester. I Am Brad Hester on Instagram. Check him out. He's actually a rapper, and so he voices our character Michael. And so for Money Mike Mondays, what we do is he drops a dope verse about finance, and he makes it really cool and makes it really fun. In the future, right now we have one, it's a cappella. In the future, we'll be doing different ones with beats and such. So, that's pretty much what Shares TV is about. And we have an episode, our very first episode is coming out. It's called Did Your Parents Have McDonald's Money? And that's pretty much discussing habits that we learned growing up surrounding money and how it's affected us today. So every episode will feature a specific topic around money. And the show is pretty much just centered around helping millennials really gather and collect themselves when it comes to finances so that we can, have something to pass down for future generations. It's really just to encourage, to motivate, and to inspire.
Oh, that's awesome. I like that. A few key points there, just to echo some of the points that you mentioned earlier. I watched a couple of videos, and I watched one in reference to downsizing. I watched one in reference to how important credit is and some of the tips you can do about credit repair and just building your credit in general. And I thought it was really cool. And I encourage everyone to check those videos out. They're nice. The art is great. The voice acting is great. So definitely check that out. That's pretty cool. So you mentioned the episode coming out that your parents have McDonald's money, and I can't tell you how many stories about how for us it was Wendy's. My mom, every time we would drive by Wendy's, I asked my mom, and almost always she said no. But that's a part of saving money, right? Knowing when and where to spend extra money. Would you say saving money is easy?
I think, and I say this as somebody who's not a finance expert, but I think it really depends on your discipline level. And based on research, I think for our generation in particular, it's just really difficult because, where the millennial generation is one of the generations with like some of the highest student loan debt. If you live in a city like New York, most of your income is going towards your living expenses, which leaves, not a lot of their money to put towards, your savings account, your credit, your loans, whatever else you have going on in your life. So I think it really depends. Because it's so much more difficult for us, I think we have to be a lot more disciplined. And I know for me personally, I evaluate my bank statement every month, especially since I started writing shares. And the irony of writing shares for me is that, when I started, I have not been in the best financial space that I could have been. Like, I'm not starving or hungry, but, I could definitely be doing better. And so I think for me, I know I go through my bank statement every month and I see what I spend money on per month. So if I realize I spent too much money on Starbucks that month, then I cut that down in half, and whatever I would have spent, I put it in my savings account. I also started looking into like online savings, which I learned through my partner is they give you a higher interest rate than a regular typical traditional bank. So like online accounts like Ally's, I think Capital One has one. Their interest rates are usually like 1.75%. In comparison to the like 0.01% that you would get at a traditional bank. So I think for me personally, it's not easy saving, but I think it's about discipline and really getting focused and really finding what your goal is. Like, are you saving because you want to go on vacation? Are you saving just because you want to have extra money regularly? You want to be able to enjoy yourself, maybe go on a concert every now and then? I think it's really important to just set goals. But to your question directly, is it easy? It is not, but I think it can be done.
I agree. I think the biggest takeaway there is you're right. Saving can't be easy all of the time, but it can be simple. And we can make it simple by, putting ourselves in a position to keep better track of our money and to look for new ways to save. Sometimes the older, outdated, traditional ways won't help. So we need to find newer ways to save. So I think that's really important. Now, there's a stigma out there that, millennials, we get a lot of bad rap in almost everything. I think arguably we probably had the best cartoons growing up. But other than that, everything else is like pretty bad. If you talk to the baby boomers or the Gen Xers, we get a lot of bad rap. One of those things is we have a hard time saving, right? And you mentioned some of the reasons for that. It can be a little bit difficult. Why in particular do you think adults under 35 have such a hard time saving money?
I really think part of it is, like I said, I think part of it is living expenses. Part of it is coming out of school with such high student debt. And then a lot of times you go to school, you come out with this high debt, and you can't get a job immediately. Some people take longer than 6 months to get their first job. And if you do get your first job, are you making enough to really sustain yourself? So I think that's part of the reason why millennials in particular have such a hard time, really building and getting, into spaces where they can become owners and really take control of their financial freedom. And again, I say this not as a financial expert, but just as somebody who's been doing a lot of research for writing shares. So I think that's a lot of why it is, but I do think if you gather the proper resources, like whether it be through Shares TV, whether it be through Google, your own other, forms of research, that you can achieve your goal. You can pay off your debt. You can save money. You can really make great headway into your own financial freedom. But I really think the part of the reasons why it's so hard to save is just I think we just have it a lot harder. As far as like our living circumstances, inflation is higher. Everything for us, I think, is much higher, which is why a lot of millennials still live at home or get assistance from their families as far as paying rent and bills. So yeah, I think overall it's just the circumstances that make it harder. But again, it's discipline. For me personally, I don't live at home. I pay rent. I do have some forms of debt, not a lot, but some. And it's difficult for me. So I can only imagine, for people that have like hundreds of thousands, of student loans, plus credit cards, plus maybe a car note, and you're living on your own and you're only making like $45,000 a year. It's like, how do you do it, So yeah, I think that's a lot of the reason why we're having a hard time and why we've turned to like, side hustles and social media and other forms of making money. I think that has a lot to do with it. And that, again, based on all research and based on just what I've learned through shares.
Yeah, there's a lot to take away from there. Biggest thing is, saving money versus spending money, knowing the difference. And the one consistent thing that I've heard throughout the whole interview is just being disciplined. So discipline is a great cure or a great idea to have when it comes to saving money, especially. So you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but just to dive into it a little bit more specifically, I know you mentioned it about on social media. What are some of the ways that people can get more information on shares and even watch some of the animated shorts that you have out?
So the best way to get information on shares currently is to head to our page. It's at Shares TV. And if you have any questions, you can always contact me. And on Shares TV, whether it be through YouTube, that's the name for all of our platforms. So it's on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. It's at Shares TV, and we're currently building our website. We also have 2 features that are already out. One is on Boss Magazine, BAUCE.com, bossmagazine.com, or boss.com, I should say, but it's Boss Magazine. And another one, It's Her Purpose, at It's Her Purpose on Instagram. You can check out my feature where I discuss shares and our journey. So if you have any questions, people can always feel free to reach out to me, and we're always open to taking suggestions and thoughts So, yeah, those are the ways you can reach out and get more information. We're very transparent about everything we do. All of the writing, all of the content is very original. It's also, from my partner, again, at Financial Lituation. Check him out. He's a really great expert, and he really knows what he's talking about when it comes to money and finance. So those are some of the ways that you can get information is by, getting on our pages and reaching out, commenting, liking, sharing, really just engaging yourself, because that's the best way to do it. And we've really tried hard to make money fun for people. Money is such a taboo topic. People don't like to really discuss it. If they do discuss it, it's in private, it's in their personal homes. But we're trying to make it a public thing, a public conversation where people can go and then see characters that look like themselves, right? Or see characters that share their stories. One of the things that I really tried to do with writing their lives is really make them relatable. So, one of our characters didn't even go to college, Michael. He's not a college graduate, and I felt like that was a piece of the story that needed to be included, because not every single millennial went to college. Not everybody could afford it, but that doesn't mean they still don't have a story to tell as far as it relates to money. So yeah, I think for any information, just go check out our page. It's at Shares TV. Instagram has our biggest following right now. We upload our content there the most, but Facebook and our YouTube pages also are available. Make sure you also subscribe to YouTube at Shares TV. Again, our first episode is dropping this week.
Fantastic. Well, hey, Tasha, this was a pleasure. Not only just talking about Shares TV and some of the ways we can help our peer group, but just talking with you and catching up with you is always good to hear from you. Thank you so much for, doing the interview. Thank you so much for participating and giving me the opportunity to share Shares TV. And I look forward to doing this in the future sometime.
Of course, it was a pleasure. I do look forward to doing the same.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tasha. That was valuable advice, priceless advice. Pun is definitely intended. And I can't wait to see not only where your business goes, but I'm looking forward to you all to reach out to Tasha for just help. And it's free stuff. You can just go on their page and take a look at some of the videos. It's pretty cool. I love some of the characters in the videos, and like you heard Tasha say, it's all original content. So I think that's pretty dope. We need to support people who look and sound like us, guys. And I think it's really important for us to get on the bandwagon with a lot of our peers. So definitely check that out, and let me know if you want to get in touch with Tasha. Feel free to get in touch with me if you are a little bit bashful about getting in touch with her directly. Feel free to get in touch with me, and I'll go ahead and put you on. And definitely check out Shares TV. Now, just some updates regarding the show, everyone, that I wanted to run by you all. So I am going on vacation next week. I'm going down to DC. I'm going to Otakon. It's a big, huge anime convention. There are also other things there like art and music and video games. But I can't wait to go. I went way back in 2015. I went to Anime Boston in 2016. I missed Otakon the last 2 years. And I can't wait to return. I'm really looking forward to hanging out to some friends that I don't get to see often. I'm really looking forward to diving deeper into a culture that I love, that I don't get to expose myself to on a daily basis or even a weekly basis at that. So I can't wait to dive into that. And I'm trying an Airbnb for the first time. It's a huge house. It's going to be a lot of us in this place, and I can't wait to just interact. And I think I'm honestly looking forward more to hanging out with everybody than I am the actual event. So I can't wait to do that. Now, I'll be leaving Thursday afternoon to head on down to DC. Otakon is in Washington, DC this year. So if you are a listener of the show and you are going to Otakon, definitely hit me up. I would love to see you and chat and talk about the show and other things that interest you. But I'll be down to Otakon. I'll be down in DC, and I won't be coming back to the following week. So I won't be available to record a show on Thursday morning because I'll have some running around to do. And I won't be able to put the show out on Friday because I won't have my laptop with me. So instead, what I'm going to do is record the show on Wednesday and then drop it Thursday morning. So look out for that Thursday morning. So it will come a day sooner than normal. It normally drops on Friday. It's dropping on Thursday. And that means you have to wait 8 days for the next episode as opposed to 7. But I'm sure you guys will be okay. And it'll give you a chance to catch up on some previous shows. So definitely check out Otakon if you haven't already. It's pretty dope. If you're in the DC area, definitely holla at your boy. I can't wait to interact with you all. And I can't wait to just tell you guys about that experience as well when I come back. I can't wait to talk about it. I'm sure I'll have a plethora of topics to talk about involving anime culture and the otaku culture. Finally, before I get going, guys, I want to give you a few updates. So just to reference the ITIYL gift card giveaway, anyone who's a patron, anyone who supports me via Patreon and they have access to the Patreon, the patron exclusive Facebook group page. Just as another thank you for supporting me, you will get an additional entry to the raffle. So how the ITIYL gift card giveaway works, and I'll let you know when it goes live, but how the ITIYL gift card giveaway works, I ask you to just reach out to me in various different ways and let me know what your favorite episode was and why, and then you get an entry to win a $20 gift card of your choice. Everyone so far has chosen Amazon. I can't say I blame them. I totally understand why. Everyone has got one single entry. If you are a patron, you automatically get an entry, period. So you'll get 2 entries, one for being a patron and one for submitting what your favorite episode is and why. I want to come up with as many ways as possible to thank my patrons. You guys are a huge part of what I do. And I can't wait to hit all of the goals with you all. And I'm looking forward to the next goal. Speaking of patrons, shout out to Briar. Briar has been a huge support to the show, and he has helped me out via Patreon and supported the show via Patreon. And I just wanted to shout him out. I used to work with Briar, and Briar and I always clicked. We just we're both city kids, and we both could relate on a lot of different levels. And it was nice to, a lot of our peers and coworkers were older, so there were certain things that we couldn't relate to them with. So Brian and I kind of clicked, and we were both newer to the experience that we were in at the time, and we both had very similar struggles when it came to our clientele working in an environment that we were working in. So Brian decided to donate to the show and support the show. Thank you so much, Brian. I really appreciate it, and you are awesome. To be like Briar and to be like others who have supported the show, you can visit my Patreon. It's patreon.com/ITIYL. That's ITIYL, the show's initials. You can check that out and listen to any or take a look at any of the things that I have on there. I also have an intro video on the page that briefly explains the page and what it's about. So definitely check that out. But any support that you guys can offer, I really appreciate it, whether it's $1 or $1 million. I really do. In the meantime, everybody, keep an eye out on the YouTube for some cool videos, some cool bonus videos. Keep an eye out on Facebook. Keep an eye out for Twitter. Keep an eye out on Instagram for little behind the scenes and extra tidbits. In the meantime, everybody, I got to get going. It's time for work, and I can't wait to talk to you guys out in the field. In the meantime, as always, I'll keep talking if you'll listen. Take care.